Now back in 2016, it felt like you couldn't go anywhere without hearing Desiigner's breakout song, Panda. The song dominated clubs, radio stations, and social media before reaching #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and turning Desiigner into one of the hottest new artists in hip-hop. At the time, it looked like he was on the verge of becoming the genre's next major star. But in the years that followed, his music gradually became overshadowed by personal struggles, troubling headlines, and repeated legal issues. And now, following his latest arrest, people are once again asking the same question: what is going on with Desiigner? So for anyone who hasn't heard, Desiigner is now going viral over a recent domestic incident that eventually led to his arrest. So this happened in South Carolina on Wednesday, July 15, 2026, at a home on Arbor Ridge Circle in the Conway area. So according to police, this is what happened. Desiigner was at the home with his girlfriend, who is also the mother of his child. The situation reportedly began when the two got into an argument over Desiigner removing televisions from the walls inside the house. So the argument reportedly started over Desiigner taking these televisions down from the walls, something that on the surface sounds like a pretty ordinary household disagreement, but according to police, the situation quickly escalated far beyond that. Desiigner then allegedly grabbed two of the woman's phones and smashed them with a hammer. Police say this prevented her from using either phone to call 911. At that point, the woman reportedly picked up their child, ran out the house, and began calling out the surrounding neighbors for help. Police say Desiigner followed her outside and eventually caught up with her in a neighbor's yard. Now, according to the report, he allegedly grabbed the woman and threw her to the ground while she was still holding their child. Police say he then ripped a Dior handbag away from her and threw it over a nearby fence. The woman reportedly managed to get back onto her feet, ran inside the neighbor's home with the child, and locked herself inside a bathroom. But according to police, the situation continued outside. Desiigner allegedly began damaging the neighbor's vehicles using a hammer and screwdriver. He is also accused of damaging several front windows of the home and grabbing a wooden chair from the porch, which police say he repeatedly threw near one of the windows while apparently attempting to get inside. Now, by this point, police had reportedly received multiple 911 calls about the disturbance. When officers arrived, they found Desiigner outside the home with blood covering his left hand and took him into custody. And because of the injury, he was first taken to Conway Medical Center for treatment. After being released from the hospital, he was transported to the J. Rubin Long Detention Center. Police charged him with second-degree domestic violence and 3 counts of malicious injury to personal property. And investigators say the 2 destroyed iPhones and the Dior handbag were worth approximately $2,700 altogether. So yeah, that's pretty much where this particular incident ended, with Desiigner being taken into custody. It was a domestic situation that apparently got extremely messy, and while the hammer allegation is the part dominating the headlines, there was clearly a lot more going on than just that one detail. I mean, based on what the police are alleging, even the neighbors somehow ended up catching smoke in the middle of all this. Now, this is not the first time Desiigner has faced similar types of situations. Just a few months ago, on March 2nd, 2026, police responded to another reported disturbance involving Desiigner and the mother of his child. Now, this particular reporting doesn't explicitly confirm whether this was the same woman in both of these situations, but considering both situations happened in South Carolina, I'm assuming it probably was, unless Desiigner has multiple baby moms living under the same roof, which would be a whole separate toxic situation. I'm just going to assume that is not what's going on here. In the earlier situation, Desiigner was arrested on March 23rd and charged with third-degree domestic violence. He posted a $1,500 bond and was released the following day on March 24. So these are 2 separate domestic violence arrests in South Carolina within only a few months of each other. And now, here we are. For anyone who was paying attention back in 2016, you probably remember just how quickly Desiigner blew up. The song Panda became one of the biggest breakout records of that entire year. And for a moment, it generally looked like Desiigner was about to become a very big thing. Things were definitely looking up for him, but there was also a lot going on around his rise. One of the biggest conversations at the time involved Atlanta rapper Future. From the moment Desiigner became popular, people constantly compared his voice, flow, and overall style to Future, with some even accusing him of copying him. That created a little tension between the two artists. Future appeared to throw shade his way, while Desiigner repeatedly said that he had no issues with Future and respected his music. So I wouldn't necessarily call it a major beef, but the comparisons followed Desiigner throughout his entire breakout. And apparently Designer's career could have gone in a completely different direction, because 50 Cent later revealed that he had considered signing him before Kanye West did. But 50 Cent ultimately decided to pass on the opportunity. And as for why he made that decision, well, listen to what 50 Cent himself had to say.
You know what came to me? I was, what's the name? Sound like Future. He sounded like Future.
I got clubs in Atlanta.
Panda. Yep,
Yeah,
I got bras in Atlanta. I met with him before he did the deal with Kanye. Had him at the office. I'm like, yo, so let me hear the other records you got. And he's like, I said, that's it. And I was like, nah, I can't get that money. Let them give him whatever they're gonna do.
So in 50 Cent's words, he actually met with Desiigner before the Kanye West deal happened. At that point, Panda was already an extremely hot record, but when 50 asked to hear what else Desiigner had recorded, like, hey, what else you got aside from this song? He apparently didn't hear enough additional material to feel comfortable signing him. And 50 said he understood that situation personally because when he first made a successful record back in the day, he still had to learn how to follow it up because that's a skill, right? So from his perspective, the problem was not that Panda was not good enough. The song was clearly massive. His concern was whether Desiigner was actually prepared to build an entire career around that moment or whether the attention surrounding that one hit would become a distraction before he had the next record already. And honestly, 50 Cent made a very, very good point. A lot of times people can land this huge record only a few months after they first, let's say, started making music. But when success comes that quickly, they may not have had enough time to build the identity, discipline, or experience needed to maintain it. That applies to life in general. Sometimes when things take longer than you expect, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are falling behind. You simply might be building yourself into the kind of person who can actually handle the blessings once they arrive. Now, later that same year, Desiigner followed up Panda with another record called Timmy Turner. That song did fairly well and showed that he was capable of creating attention beyond his original breakout hit, but it never reached anywhere near the level of Panda. As the years went on, the music gradually became overshadowed by situations unfolding in Desiigner's personal life. Then in April 2023, Desiigner became involved in an extremely public incident while he was on a Delta flight, traveling from Tokyo to Minneapolis. According to federal authorities, Desiigner was seated in the Delta One cabin when a flight attendant reportedly noticed him exposing himself roughly 60 to 90 minutes into the flight. He initially covered himself, but approximately 5 minutes later, 2 other flight attendants allegedly saw him masturbating. Authorities said he exposed himself multiple times and continued the behavior despite being instructed to stop. And at that point, a flight attendant handed Desiigner an FAA violation card, formally warning him that his behavior appeared to violate federal law. The crew then moved him toward the back of the aircraft and seated him near 2 people who had been traveling with him. Those companions agreed to monitor him for the remainder of the flight. Once the plane landed at Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport, Desiigner was detained and interviewed by an FBI agent. He was later charged in federal court with 1 misdemeanor count of indecent exposure aboard an aircraft. Desiigner eventually pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 2 years of probation, 120 hours of community service, and a $5,000 fine. After his sentencing, reports began circulating that Desiigner would be required to register as a sex offender. However, his attorney pushed back and said that information was actually false, explaining that registration was not an automatic condition of his probation. Desiigner also responded to the reports himself in this video.
I'm here to correct all these journalists and all these blogs for writing false narratives saying that I have to register for being a sex offender and I've been to jail. I don't have to register for being a sex offender and I've never been in jail.
Now, after the incident blew up, Desiigner released a statement explaining that he had been struggling personally for several months and had not been thinking clearly after receiving medical treatment overseas.
I wasn't in the right place. Like, I had a long time to think about this, and it's just like literally mentally I wasn't in the right place. I was just like having so much fun. I was just having so much fun and just like not controlling myself at the time. So
he said that he was ashamed of what happened, announced that he would cancel his upcoming commitments, and stated that he had planned to enter a facility to receive help for his mental health. So Desiigner at this point has now been involved in several extremely public situations. And honestly, I don't know what he might be dealing with behind the scenes, but that is also the thing with stories like this. People usually don't repeatedly end up in situations like this that are this serious without there being deeper issues somewhere beneath the surface. And this is not me making an excuse for him. Whatever somebody's going through, it doesn't give you the right to frighten, control, or harm other people. I think we all can agree with that. But I do think there's something to be said about recognizing that destructive behavior often comes from problems that were never properly addressed. And these public stories only give us a very small glimpse into somebody's life. Desiigner's situation happens to be unfolding in front of millions of people, but there are countless situations like this that happen behind the scenes, behind closed doors, that never become headlines. So while we can't diagnose him or claim to know exactly what is happening, this is still a reminder of why mental health, accountability, and getting help before things escalate are all extremely important. And there's also something to be said about the children who unfortunately are caught in the middle of domestic situations like this. The adults involved may have made the decision to enter a relationship, live together, and build a life with one another. But the child, of course, had no choice at all. Now, that doesn't mean that either person deserves to be harmed, threatened, or controlled in that situation, but they did choose the relationship, right? However, the child obviously doesn't have a choice. The child didn't choose the relationship, the arguments, or the environment they're brought into. And unfortunately, when things become unstable, they are the ones who are forced to witness it, live through it, and potentially carry the effects long after the immediate situation is over. Whatever issue exists between two adults, once a child is present, it becomes bigger than just those two people involved. And I think that is really what makes this entire situation so difficult to look at, because at one point, Desiigner was extremely popular. I mean, Panda was everywhere. I'm sure a lot of you guys remember that. He had a lot of attention around him, and it looked like he had a real opportunity to build a lasting music career. But years later, unfortunately, the music has almost taken a backseat to these very public situations. And again, I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. None of us do. We also don't know how this recent situation is going to play out. But when you look at everything that has happened publicly over the years, it is hard not to ask the question, what is really going on with Desiigner? And whatever the full answer is, hopefully everybody involved is able to find some clarity and peace moving forward. If you made it this far, drop a little like on this video. Subscribe if you're new here. My name is Blackie Speaks. Nice to meet you. What do you guys think about some of these situations Desiigner has been involved in and this later situation? You guys let me know in the comment section below, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace. I'm out.